Destination Freedom. I'm Christopher Gronsky, and I'm glad you're here. It's a good time. I think my jacket matches the drapes. that's that's too much. I worked very hard to have my jacket match the drapes. That's crazy. Yeah. Anyway, but I'm glad to be here. We're going to talk about some things. Uh, and I have a lot that's in my heart and head. We'll see if I get out. Should I do some announcements first or do them at the end? Wait. Okay, we'll do them at the end. So we'll get right into our subject matter. And today's um, subject matter is: does Trump support the Second Amendment? Uh, That's uh, that's the that's the subject matter. Well, I think in order to look at that, we have to look at things in a number of different places. First of all, politically, let's talk about that. And I would have to say, absolutely, politically, Trump absolutely supports the Second Amendment. He would say so. There's no question about that. But the thing you have to ask yourself is, most people do not understand federal jurisdiction. Okay, they they just don't. Okay, and one of the ways that you can figure out whether someone does understand federal jurisdiction is is simply just to ask them questions like this: do federal gun laws, or I should say, are federal gun laws constitutional? Most people in the gun spaces are going to say they're not constitutional. And I'm going to tell you, yes, they are. They are, absolutely. And the reason that they're constitutional, you're going to have to see it in the Constitution. Because look, the Second Amendment shows up as the Second Amendment to the Constitution. But if you look up in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, that gives the federal government exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever in the 10 square miles, which is the district of, or 10-mile square, which is the District of Columbia, which includes federal territories, bases, enclaves, things like that. All those federal places, that is federal jurisdiction. And so federal gun laws are for those geographic locations and U.S. citizens and resident aliens. Okay, that's what federal gun laws regulate. Okay, and so most people believe that when they fill out forms that they're in the United States. They don't realize that the definition of these legal forms and the statutes and codes, when they're looking up the term United States, they don't realize that the definition of the term United States that the federal government is using is the District of Columbia. And you just have to look up those definitions. And if you look at the language, and you have to be critical when looking at the language means what it says and says what it means. Okay. So in their jurisdiction, they only have to have rules and such as that. Now, here's the thing. There's no such thing as constitutional rights. Rights don't come from the Constitution. It says in the Ninth Amendment to the Constitution that it says that, I may be paraphrasing. I could look it up. I got a Constitution right here, but I probably don't have my, I do have my glasses. Good thing. I got it. So we're not in a hurry here. Might as well be accurate. We're going to look at the Ninth Amendment to the Constitution, right? So this is the federal Constitution. Ninth Amendment says, listen to this: the numeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So it says that even though they're saying that there are rights in the Constitution, does not mean that's the only rights you have. So, and so that's an important thing to understand. The Constitution gives you nothing. You could say constitutionally protected rights, if any. Okay, and so that's a possibility. But the idea is that there's no such thing as constitutional rights. All rights, which I go into great detail about this in our state citizenship class, State versus Federal Citizenship, the Unknown Choice. You can check out that class at DestinationFreedom.org. But rights are are from the divine. They're natural. You're born with them. And so everyone has the same rights. There are no um, women's rights. There are no black rights. There's no gay rights. There's no such thing as group rights at all. Rights are individual, and so everyone has all of them. Whatever it is a group would like to have, if all the members in that group have rights secured, then the group will have its rights secured. But it's always an individual thing, okay? So when we're talking about the Second Amendment, let's read the Second Amendment so we know exactly what the Second Amendment says. We don't want to misquoted here, okay? It says, this is, and it's, what a great word, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, this was written before the 14th Amendment to the Constitution that created that statutory citizen called a U.S. citizen, okay? There were only, as Article 4, Section 2 states, there were only citizens of the states before there was a federal citizen. And so it was expected that the federal government would not violate the citizens of the states, and the Second Amendment protects the citizens of the states. But if you're claiming to be a federal citizen, then not only are you in that jurisdiction, the president can order you because he is the executive officer of the executive branch. So you might not want to be a citizen subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And so therefore, that can be problematic. And those first slaves looking for any kind of relief from the physical slave master, came right in and became citizens of the District of Columbia. Now they can't they can't give these people rights because governments can't give rights. So all they can do is give them privileges and immunities, as it says in the 14th Amendment. Maybe we should read the 14th Amendment, the beginning of that. And we'll get back to Trump here in a second. So hold your hat. I'm just giving you a basis. So listen to this. Just the first part of the 14th Amendment says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Listen to this. No state. So listen to this. These federal citizens, the federal government can say to the state, no state shall no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Now, this amendment to the Constitution gives the federal government the power to say to the states, listen carefully, to say to the states, you shall not abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. These are federal citizens. So the federal government has the constitutional authority to tell the states they're not going to abridge the privilege of firearm owning. Now, I didn't say right, the privilege, okay? And that's what they're going to call civil rights. Are privileges, really. Even though they call them rights, they're called those civil rights. There's no such thing. There's no natural civil rights. Civil rights are granted by governments, okay? So civil rights can be given and taken away. They're privileges. And that's all that the federal citizen is offered is privileges and immunities. So under the privilege, and here's the thing that's kind of wild that the federal government does, is they have to make these civil laws, these civil rights look like rights. So they cannot overreach that because they'll lose the political power that they're governing. So they may push off the state governments and say, hey, listen, because one of the things that that Trump's dealing with right now is what they call concealed reciprocity, which means what Trump wants to do is he wants to say that if you have a concealed carry in a particular state in which they do a background check, among other things, in order to give you a concealed carry, that just like a driver's license or a marriage license or whatever, they the state has to accept those things. And listen, the state's not accepting each other's um, marriage certificates. Some states don't recognize same-sex marriages. I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head whether all the states are, because New Hampshire doesn't give same. I don't think they do. Um, but I'm not clear about that subject matter. But they would expect that. We do recognize that marriage licenses are recognized in all the states. There's a reciprocity of that. Another thing, certainly driver's license. And so what Trump is offering or suggesting is that people should be able to travel into these different states without being molested by their government. New York's one of the worst. You can't get out of New England with a firearm without going through New York State. Sad to say. But and then God forbid you actually land in an airport and actually carry a piece of a firearm like a clip or something that you checked with the airline that it was okay, that it was empty, checked with TSA that it was in your bag and all that. So it's all legal, and you arrive in New York City and somehow they know that that flight is, that you have this on there, and they literally arrest you in New York City despite it being, legal in federal and all that. That's going to show up with respect to this conceal. And I don't think they're going to allow concealed carry. They're going to have reciprocity in every state, but you can't get on an airplane. Let me tell you something. If people could carry on an aircraft, it'd be the safest aircraft flying in the air right now. I'll tell you that right now. No bozo with a box cutter is going to stand up and say, uh, I'm going to take this plane with this, it'd be like, sit down, dude. I mean, that's never going to happen. So, I mean, if you could get the fire or the air marshals to be carrying, what a blessing that would be, which they do in other airlines, but not in liberal America. That would be amazing. But anyway, but that's what Trump is after. So is that constitutional? See, the Constitution doesn't have to support. Let me back up where I was going to go with this, is because one of the questions is, does Trump support the Second Amendment? If Trump supported the Second Amendment, then what he would really do is not talk about conceal. He would say to all the states, you shall not infringe in any way. He would literally have to abolish federal gun laws. Is that going to happen? That's not going to happen. He's not going to tell these states what they can do in those states with respect to firearms. Now, the federal government is the biggest regulator of firearms, and most states defer or use the guidance of, if you have obligations in the federal, then you may have obligations in the state. And how do I know this? Because just like the way that they deal with, the state deals with income tax by the federal. If you have a federal income tax liability, you'll have a state income tax liability. So if in the federal you have a federal gun obligation, then in the states they will follow suit with having a federal state gun obligation. And so that's some of the problem with this. So he's really just going to, it's just going to be for travel. But I'll tell you, he's going to get a lot of pushback from some of these liberal states of people carrying in from other states their firearms. Listen, I looked up, Vermont is a conceal and is an open carry state. Vermont's an open carry, and New Hampshire is what they call constitutional carry, but not Massachusetts. Maine is, yeah. Maine, Vermont, but not Massachusetts. That's Massachusetts. They're kind of stinky about. You'd have to get a conceal permit in Massachusetts in order to be able to carry between New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And some people do. I know people that that have a conceal for Massachusetts, and because they always want to carry. And there's plenty of people in. Now the funny thing is, constitutional carry, and some of the states read this way, is that they want you to show that you're carrying. They don't want you to conceal. And so it can become illegal to conceal when you don't have a conceal permit. A constitutional carry many times means an open carry. And listen, in many states, even before they had a constitutional carry, as long as you were showing you carried a firearm, like if you were hunting and whatever, as long as you were showing, it was going to be okay. But the moment that your jacket covered over the firearm, now you're breaking the law. I personally got it concealed because I wanted to wear whatever clothes or fashion statement I was into. I didn't want to have to determine whether my clothes were carrying if I got into a car or whatever it is, you know. The other thing that I do, even though I have a conceal, I always open carry because I want people to see my firearm, because I'm trying to educate people to not be triggered, no pun intended, triggered by seeing a firearm. And when I'm in a store and I see someone carrying a firearm, it always blesses me. And so I always walk up to those people and say, thanks for carrying. It comforts me. So I want them to know, yeah, I'm up for that. Thank you. You know, because we're going to be working as a team. And I've played that out many times. You know, carrying a firearm. I remember one time I was in Wolfboro and went into my local branch, my bank, you know, and they knew me, and I would be open carrying, you know, and so I'm carrying my gun in the bank, and so I'm there in line, I'm waiting, and everybody knows me, and I'm ready to do the deposit that day. And that deposit that day was over 10 grand, you know, and I'm like, I'm in the bank, right? So I noticed this guy outside, because I pay attention. I'm not on my phone. That was, I don't know if that was before phones, but anyway, I could see this guy looking in the bank from outside, and I'm noticing him, and I'm like, wow, that's really weird. Maybe the guy's casing the joint. I might have to, you know, pull my cape out and spring into action or something. I don't know. I just thought it was weird. I did notice him. Anyway, so eventually I finished my deposit, and then I went outside, and the guy came up to me, and he said, why were you carrying your gun in the bank? I said, I was carrying my gun. The bank, it's a good thing to carry in the bank too. You never know. And he said, well, I think that was disrespectful. I said, why is that? He says, because people could be, upset or whatever. I said, if you go in and talk to the bank and ask them if I was respectful in the bank, I was making a $10,000 deposit. I mean, that's very respectful activity in the bank. Now, if I was making a withdrawal, you could make the case I was pulling money out of the bank. It was out of my own account, but I was making a deposit, And I said, so that's weird. I said, do you have firearms? And he said he did. I don't know if I believed him. And he said that it was, very disrespectful. I said, well, that's your opinion. I do it for educational purposes. So I went home. I get a call from the police chief in town. He calls me up and says, we got a call from the TD Bank security and said that you came in the bank carrying a firearm. Is that right? I said, of course. Everybody carries firearms, don't they? He's like, okay. He says, well, do you want to come down to the police department and talk with TD Bank security? I said, do I have to come to the police department to talk to TD Bank? He says, no. I'm like, I'm not going to the police department to talk to them. I said, look, give them my number. I'll be glad to talk to them on the phone. He's like, okay. I did. So the TD Bank, this is like all happening all at the same time. I'm like, wow, this is an awesome day. So TD Bank calls me up and they say, hi, this is security with TD Bank. It was a woman. And she says, did you carry a firearm into the TD Bank? I said, I did. I said, do you have a no carry firearm? Do you have a policy that don't allow people to carry firearms into the bank? No. I'm like, okay. I said, do your deposit? I said, she says, what's your intentions with the firearm? I said, are you asking me if I would thwart a robbery of the bank? It's like, no, if the bank was being robbed, I don't care. FDIC insures every account for $250 at the time. It's now $300,000. I said, I don't care about the bank. I said, no, I don't. I said, now if he was pointing a firearm at people, yeah, I might spring into action. And she says, oh, that's where we have a problem. I said, me protecting life, the bank has a problem with? She says, yeah. I said, Does the bank know that the bank has a policy that if someone was stopping a robbery and was threatening people with their life, that the bank doesn't want those people protected? Have you let the bank members know that? He says, no. I said, and so I said, do you have a request for me? She says, yes, I request that you don't carry your firearm in the bank. I said, request denied. I said, so I want you to know that I'm always going to be carrying when I'm in the bank, I will conceal when I'm in the bank. But I want you to contact the bank and let them know that if they see me, I'm always carrying a firearm. Okay? He says, okay, have a nice day. Goodbye. And so that's what I said. And so, so anyway, so that that was my firearm story for that. That's a good firearm story. So anyway, getting back to, does Trump uphold the Constitution? Politically, I would say, I mean, does he uphold the Second Amendment? Politically, I would say he would say yes. But the federal government does not have to uphold the Second Amendment in their jurisdiction. They don't. They have exclusive legislative authority in all cases whatsoever in their jurisdiction, and the federal U.S. citizen is in that jurisdiction, and you're going to see that the federal government is going to give them privileges or immunities. So it's just going to look like it's the Second Amendment, when, remember, the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. It's already an infringement that Americans have firearms regulated by the federal government. But again, the Constitution gives them the power to to legislate all cases whatsoever in their jurisdiction, and that's what federal gun laws do. So anyway, that's the answer to whether Trump upholds the Constitution. Is it's not going to be, the Second Amendment is not going to be upheld as it's written by this administration. I don't see that. I don't see that at all. Because if that was the case, you would see gun laws would not be enforced. That would be the Second Amendment. Not that he's going to work out a federal law, which they can do, in which the states are required to recognize concealed reciprocity. If they do that, that'll be wonderful. But that's got nothing to do with the Second Amendment. Okay? Anyway, I just wanted to let you know that about the Trump administration and what I believe about the Second Amendment. Now I want to get into some of the stuff that's coming up before we wrap up this particular call. I want to talk about some of the things we got coming down the wire here at Destination Freedom. Now we have we are in we're working together with Jeff Berwick and the Anarchapulco, and they're doing a virtual series called The Nonconformist that gives real answers to real freedom problems and gives real solutions that you can actually apply in a number of different areas. And the beauty of it is you don't have to fly out to Mexico or Acapulco to enjoy this particular virtual conference, but it's going to be brought to you online virtually, and that'll be coming up this weekend. That is the 31st of May and the 1st of June, Saturday and Sunday. That's going to be online, so you can check it out, and we'll put down in the body of if this is on YouTube, we'll have it in the body a link to the Nonconformist in Acapulco. It'll be on the screen. Okay, we'll see if we get that on there. But anyway, that's coming up this coming weekend. Then later on in June, we're going to be at the Pork Fest. Now, I've been at the Pork Fest. I think there were 2 years I didn't make it to Pork Fest because I was in Washington State. But we're going to be up in Lancaster, New Hampshire, and at the Rogers Campground. And that's where the Free State Project does their Porcupine Festival. Okay, that's what Pork Fest means, is Porcupine Festival. And that's going to be exciting because we're going to be on main stage on Friday. I think that's the 20th. I'll be on stage with Jeff Berwick. That'll be exciting. And Then we also are part of the Exit Lounge. That'll be a nice venue. I'll be speaking daily, 11 o'clock starting, I guess, on Tuesday for us because we'll be setting up on Monday. Tuesday through, I'm not sure if it's Saturday or Sunday. Usually Sunday's breakdown typically. So probably Tuesday through Saturday morning, 11 o'clock. There is another talk that I'm doing. I'm not sure which day that is. Might be Thursday. Um, in the morning. It'll be pretty early in the morning. I'll be doing a bit of a workshop. That'll be exciting. And so I'll be there at the Pork Fest. The 11 o'clock in the morning, a lot of Q&A. So there's some real hands-on stuff. Get to answer all your questions about our process, about eliminating federal income tax and all that. So that's coming up at the Pork Fest. Then every night we get to hang out, sit around the campfire, drink beer, and chit-chat about liberty and freedom. Can't beat that. Hanging out with freedom-minded people for a week in the woods, sort of in the woods. The view is stunning. You can't buy that view. There are, yeah, and they're filling up fast. You can check out Airbnbs. You can check out the hotels and if they're full or not. Um, I believe Rogers Campgrounds Motel is full. They've already booked that out. It's not available. But there are RV sites. Some people like to tent on the RV sites, but there are also tent sites. They're less expensive than the RV sites, have water and electricity. Yeah, that's a good word. Edge Wallet will be one of the sponsors of um, the Exit Lounge, as well as Pirate Chain is going to be there. We've seen Pirate Chain before. I think it's going to be somebody else, but that's awesome. That's a privacy cryptocurrency, just like Monero, and they'll be there. So they'll show you how to get in, get a good pirate wallet and whatever it is. I think they even suggest Edge because I think Edge takes privacy coins. So that's awesome. So it's going to be a great time. And if you're really interested in liberty and freedom, this is going to be the place for you. What else is coming up? There is a Liberland thing in the fall, but I think we're just going to be pretty exhausted by then. We've been world travelers. We have promised ourselves um, that we were going to try to get to Thailand sometime. Got some friends got clients in Thailand. That's going to be kind of cool. You know, the best time to go there, like December, even January. So that would be kind of cool. Would that be a good time? Huh? Yeah, because then it's nice over there. It's not hot and it's not rainy. Well, it's less rainy because they definitely are lush. Um, you and I'm talking to my son Michael. Um, we do have a plan to head over to Italy. That'll be a fun time. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We'll hang out with my siblings. My sister has to retire before that stuff happens, but anyway, it's a good time. We're getting to the end of it. Was there anything else? I know I want to talk about. This is a good transition. So we're finished talking about that. I wanted to talk about um, this book, which is Constitutional Homeland Security. This is a book by Edwin Vieira, and that guy is an awesome. He's, I think he's an attorney, but he may be just a legal scholar. But I highly recommend this book, Constitutional Homeland Security. It really talks about how to empower your sheriff in your state or in your county, And if you don't know who your sheriff is in the county, then you're missing out on influencing somebody that's really important. Okay, this is an elected person directly accountable to the people. That's a great position. And so, I mean, I have my sheriff's cell phone number in my cell phone. You should have your state rep, your state senator. You should have your sheriff's number in your phone. Um, I was going to make some derogatory. I was going to say I don't have any congressmen in my phone because I don't do any human trafficking, so I don't need that. No, I don't. No, listen, I told you this before that I don't send anybody to DC. I don't think you should send good people to the swamp. It's not a good idea. And listen, it's as important as European countries over there. Listen, those people that are part of the European Union aren't even elected by them. They're appointed by their governments. Now that's the way Senate used to be in America. But anyway, but the beautiful thing is I could establish a more powerful, freedom-minded military in America by way of the states and by way of the sheriff all day long. Better, more secure than even the federal government has as a military all day long. Because listen, don't worry about having equipment, because if your state wants to buy high-end electronic weapons and stuff, well, then the state will do that. That's their, listen, what does the Second Amendment says? A well-regulated militia is necessary to secure a free state. If you consider your state a free state, then it has to have a well-regulated militia. Well, Coast Guard's another federal branch, but the thing about nice thing about the again, you want Coast Guard? We have Coast Guard for you. Maine would have a Coast Guard. New Hampshire would have a Coast Guard. All the eastern states down to Florida would have Coast Guards. No, that's a federal. That's a federal. Well, I maybe, but that doesn't show up practically at all. And even National Guard is not a state anything. Now, I understood that New York had a state guard of some sort, but I just want you to know the National Guard in your state is the federal guard. The president can order them to Afghanistan, and he does. Many times they're heading over there, and because they're lacking military help. And they allow the governors to utilize the National Guard. That's how that relationship works. But the Coast Guard is a federal branch. It's part of the I don't. Where did you get that the Coast Guard was part of the militia? Yeah, I don't see. Yeah, national again will be federal. It'll be federal. Yeah, that's not the militia. No, National Guards of any sort is when they use the word national, they're using the word like as if America's a nation, which it's not, and that is going to be federal all day long. It's a federal. It's a government thing. It's a federal government thing. It's not in the state. It's not in the state budget. Now, does the state benefit from them? Sure, they do, and they can use them in that capacity. But that's true of any branch of the government, typically. But the National Guard is usually called out for the states because they don't allow, the Constitution doesn't allow for a standing army. Okay, and that's why we have a volunteer army, and they don't. That's why they don't like the federal government, in all these states, even though they have military bases in every state. It's showing up like a standing army. It's bad. But when you have a militia made up of the people, that's not a standing army. Another thing is the word militia is demonized, and so we don't recommend that. This constitutional homeland security creates committees of safety. And what a beautiful thing that the sheriff can utilize are the people. Now imagine if he comes up with volunteers, adult males and even females, even kids can be a part of this, because you can have juniors, if you will, like they do with scouting and all that stuff. You can have those kids supporting and learning to get ready to come into those things, and when there's emergencies and all, the sheriff can call out this help. They can be well trained and in firearms and well regulated committees of safety as well. It's a great plan. So I'm going to challenge you. Did you want to mention something about what did you say? Redesigned as federal now, right? So it used to be, not anymore. Yeah. So either I don't believe the federal. It's rare. I don't believe the federal government usurped that authority. I think the states derelict in their duty. They gave they subbed out. Yeah. So what did you say? What was the year? It was yeah. So I didn't say that on there. Okay, so I'm sorry. So Michael was saying that in 1879, you said, the state having its own militia transitioned over to the Federal National Guard at that time. So again, my point is that I don't think that the federal government usurped its authority. I believe the state became derelict in its duty. So they subbed out to the federal their responsibility to, which is necessary for a free state, not a free union. Yeah, the people let it happen. Exactly. So, and again, their representatives think they know best, and the people's. It'd be interesting to look up. If we go back to the archives, look up that and see what they were discussing and warning about that. That'd be really cool. Yeah, that so you can look up that in your state too, because it probably, at least in the New England or in the eastern states, you probably saw that. By the time the older states came in, it was probably just a thing the federal government does. Again, the federal government has its fingers in everything. So hey, Trump, if you're out there, I want you to listen to this. If you could give that back to the states, now that would be powerful. Get the feds, cut that part of the budget, let the states be well ready. If you support the Second Amendment, it's necessary for a free state to have a well regulated militia. So, hey, I know you're a big supporter of the Second Amendment there, Mr. President. So that's my suggestion. Send that on in and we'll support it, okay? We'll take back those responsibilities, okay? Because remember, responsibility is the key to freedom. We'll see if that goes over. That would be cool. So yeah, so that was my word to the presidente. So yeah, so that's so again, we have 10 counties in New Hampshire. If the freedom-minded people in New Hampshire, however many we are, listen, in New Hampshire, 10,000 people voted for Ron Paul. I'm making up that we have at least 10,000 freedom-minded people in New Hampshire. We should be able to take 10 elections in the state of New Hampshire if we really cared about it. Okay? Let's take those sheriffs and make them constitutional sheriffs. Okay? And so we'll let you know more about that later on. And so that's some of the stuff I want to talk about. So if I got to find a location where we can buy this in cheaper, because I understand on Amazon this is very expensive. It's almost $200 book. Oh, it's Constitutional Homeland Security, Volume One: The Nation in Arms, the Nation in Armaments. I would imagine that'd be good. I'll look for a PDF on that. That'd be cool. A good way to get it, because I want to do with our clients. I want to do it as a book club type thing. I'll read a chapter, talk about it. That'd be kind of cool. All right. Well, hey, this is a short night, short video. It's we're glad to have you on. Be sure to like and subscribe. Be our friend, like Mr. Rogers would say, and hey, we'll still pursue liberty and freedom with all our hearts. So, I'm Christopher Gronsky. This is Destination Freedom, and I'm glad that you are here.